And welcome everyone at the next multi-network community sync. Today is October 23rd. We have like what, 1 week to go or 2 weeks before KubeCon US. We have a few topics. Lionel, you taking over. You have news. Go ahead.
Yes, I started the implementation of the CAP for the resource claim status, and I still need to write code for the metrics and for the end-to-end test, but the rest should be implemented. And I need to write the documentation for the website also. I created a pull request, but I need to write about it. I just wanted to let you know that this wasn't going.
All right. Thanks. This is awesome, by the way, because this is like a must for our kind of brainstorming on what we want to do in a few with this. But yep, thanks for the update. And I added the other one thing as well. You mentioned it got, I saw, kind of wide approval in the community. This is the CNI array driver. Let's could you mention something about that one to kind of at least in the meeting, so we have it on kind of on the record.
Yeah, I didn't want to put it in an agenda because you were saying that we should not have implementation specific things, but still I think
Let's
it was
call
a
it
good idea.
out, right? It's gonna be,
Yeah.
you know.
And the idea with this CNI DRA driver is to continue what we had in the previous talk and have to meet will be some kind of evolution of what Multus is doing. But in addition, we will have all these DRA and scheduling features. So it would be maybe good to work on this, and we will get experience also on the DRA driver and see what is missing. It's also good to have some kind of reference implementation so we can work on it from the start. Of course, we will try to follow and be compliant with multi-network. So we could have both DRA implementation and both a multi-network implementation at the same time. Oh, and maybe Doug, do you have any comments on this?
Mostly, I just want to say, awesome work. Thank you so much. All around from the CAP to the implementation to getting, reference implementation going. I'm just very excited. So this is just good news. All around, and I think represents like a leap in progress throughout this whole ecosystem. So thank you, awesome.
Yep, this is great. I think if anything, any other questions on this? All right, let's jump to the brainstorming. So last week we kicked off a discussion on how should we integrate, like, let's put it on paper on how do we, so we have POCs done by Lionel, but we want to kind of define what exactly we're going to do, right? And how we are willing to do it. And I think I have notes from last week here. What we kind of, some folks, I think, Michael, you haven't been here, but Doc, I think you captured most of the discussion, but to give you some highlights, what we ended at is, so we initially had our pod network object in our initial CAP, which we need to scrap, or at least this is what we initially kind of set on. One key element for this one was having the parameters ref. And then today we have our resource claim, right? We have our resource claim that we have to work with. It has the opaque and I think parameters. This is what is the custom field here, and we were discussing on how we reuse resource claim template, right? And there I think have two options. One of the options is we just the struct of the parameters will be the struct of whatever today is the pod network that we come up with, right? So basically, it will have all the fields plus the reference to any custom field or object that you wish to have. That was one option, and this was of course defined in the template, from which then we calculate each resource claim per pod. And we had in mind to maybe do something like this, where from template we would have some mutating webhook for ourselves, which would get the parameters ref and put it all into resource claim. So it will expand this into the struct of the spec of this object and put it here for each individual pod as a claim, right? So that was kind of the one of the ideas. The other approach was to maybe keep the pod network as it was, right? And this is, I think this is what back in June when we initially decided, okay, let's do the array. I think we said, okay, we're gonna put this claim in front of the kind of the chain of objects that we want to reference, right? I think that was the kind of gist. So basically what it meant was resource claim template would point to a pod network, which would point to custom params, right? Before we have only those two. With the array, we added the claim in front of this whole thing. And basically what it look like, it will be like this, right? So we have our claim, some community-driven driver, so some standardized driver, and then it points to a pod network name default, right? At that point, what happens is we have a clear place where we have status of a network, global status of a network. Let's not mix that with what Lionel does with his per claim status, because that one still is there and that will be still on a claim and provide that information per interface of a pod. And then I think where it boils down to, the difference between the two, beside the usability, you know, and adding additional like indirection, is what do we reference in our, you know, add-ons features, add-on features, let's call them that, right? What I mean by add-on features is like service, network policy, you name it, right? What is it? Because that's what the whole goal of this enterprise was, to have a handle for a network so that we can reference in other stuff, right? So what is that handle? Should it be resource claim or should it still be pod network, right? I think this is where we ended the discussion last week. And I think this is where I can think of what we would want to do now, right? And that's where we can continue our discussion. So I think one aspect I would like to call out was the ability to do, I think, enabled, right? What we said enabled would gives us ability to administratively set the network ready false, so that new pods cannot be created on that network. And that's for various reasons. I want to kind of migrate off of it. I want to various different reasons for that. So one of the aspect was, I think, Lionel, you mentioned, I'm not sure whether templates should be able, you should be able to mutate template, right? I think that's not a big issue. I do assume that that should be possible.
I think so. I haven't tried, but I think so, yes.
So that will not be blocked as well, but the question would be whether we are okay with modifying it here as a template or do it in a pod network, which is more clear. Doug, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I guess one thing, so that enabled true, is that part of the expansion of the object with the admission controller? So like it gets expanded so that it's available at the container runtime.
Oh, in the option 2?
So yeah, I guess so. This is, so the thing I guess I'm thinking through here is, okay, enabled true false. It has to make its way to, yeah, I guess I'm thinking of this situation where it's like, okay,
Mm.
not ready. So enabled false.
And then the pod network is not ready, but not the template, and you still can attach, right? Indirectly. Is that, I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking through.
And that's a fair point, because you have those indirection. What would have to happen? We would have to have our controller that would look at this one, will make this one not ready, and then see any templates that reference it and disable those. I think that could happen, right? So you would have, yeah, the level of indirection, annoying, because it's always, the Chook API calls slower than it will be directly on it, right? So this
Yeah,
is where, yeah, go ahead.
and from a user perspective, I'm wondering what that looks like, right? So you spin up a
Mhm.
pod, it's not ready, it's in like maybe it's in a scheduling state
Yeah,
at that
that's what
point.
should happen, right? I think that's where this should be. The pod should be in a scheduled state, and we would say that, right? Because we would say the claim template is not ready, and then our controller can as well modify some things around the resourcing as well, right? That, okay, you don't have any more resources for this network, and you cannot spin up anymore, and then uBlock scheduler that way.
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure it's like crystal clear at the user level, so that when you see it, you get maybe a Kubernetes event in the pod, so that you can see like network blue is not ready. Because the way,
Right.
and from a Multis perspective, what would happen today is you go to execute the whatever number of CNIs, one fails, and you'd get a message in the Kubernetes event, and then the pod would crash loop in that
Yeah.
particular case. But I think it's kind of cleaner that we can block it at the scheduling
Yeah.
time. We just got to make sure that it's really crystal clear to users is the thing I'm worried about, because I mean, it's already like you you get the event in a multis situation and it's enough, but it can also be kind of cryptic too. So we have an
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity here to make that good.
So
All right, cool, thank you.
I would assume this boils down to that, to how they're going to report DRA not having resources, because we leverage that. So I assume that should be very crystal clear on their side as well. So it should say something along that, like, resource for DRA network blue is not there, right? I would assume that kind of story around this one as solving that for us, right? The DRA has to be clear as well. If I try to get a claim on a resource that's kind of run out, right? How do we report that, and how clear is this part?
Yeah, let's I'm all right with how we're proceeding, but yeah, just something I had in
Yeah,
mind. So yeah, thanks for talking through that stuff.
but I think what I am saying is trying to call out that I think there is not much we could do on top of this, probably, because our controller will be just global, so it's not per node, and that will be annoying for the controller to now watch things and update and send events for pods, extra events saying that, oh, the array has their own, and then we add another event saying, we unfortunately, this network is disabled, and you cannot use that, right? I think we definitely can put that into the resource claim template, resource claim templates event conditions, right? Like where we say ready, false, administrative enabled, it's a multi-network, enabled, administratively disabled, enabled equals false, right? So this is where definitely on the resource claim we can give full details on why and what, right? But I think on the pod level, it will be tricky, right? Because it's, you have multiple, it's hard to scale that part.
Well, let's keep an eye out for what this winds up really looking like. with whatever messages we get from DRA. I guess I want to make sure that the user knows what to do next to take an action, right? Because if they get some like vague cryptic message that's like resource claim template not enabled, right? Like they they don't know, or resource claim not enabled, or whatever it happens to be, and then they don't know what to do. I'd love it that there is hopefully some way that we can pass that message back up the chain to be like, network blue is not ready. Check your provider for network blue.
Yeah.
The thing. So if it's Calico isn't ready, they know to check Calico. If they know Flannel isn't ready, go check Flannel. Something like that.
So I think that would point to resource claim. This is where we were talking as well with Lionel last week. I'm not sure whether you cut that or not. It was to kind of identify the driver, right? So I think the question was, where do we put the provider, right? I think one aspect I definitely would want to have is, how do I identify a multi-network specific claims templates, right? That our controller will have to watch out for. And I was thinking of having some sort of multi-network community domain that would call out that, yes, those are related to us, right? And what I was thinking, because it can go both ways, because we have the provider field that can take up the, let's say this will be not Fubar, Multus right here, right? And that could point out to the provider that you called out, or it can be a part of the domain here, which will be on the higher level of the claim, right? Not in the opaque fields. So this is where I think, do we get rid of this completely then, and then just this one, we have a specially formatted driver with some what is it, prefix, suffix, right? With a suffix that says, okay, it has to end with this string. That means that it's multi-network related, right? And we will enable controller and watch about that and do some stuff about that one, right? So
but we could have a generic object also with our field. Like in parameters, we can put whatever we want. So we could have enabled and this, I don't know, opaque field again inside. So everything that will be this object is considered as multi-network.
So I think what you're calling out is one thing that I do like. Maybe we can do what you're saying and do that in this track and replace this parameters ref with opaque, because I wasn't even aware the opaque existed, struct like that. And basically instead of us, but okay, that's another discussion probably. Why I'm saying this is because we already have existing objects like network attachment definition that already exists. Now you're asking, you know what, folks, move away from that and start just using directly this object without creating your network attachment definition. That's a tricky migration story, to be honest with you. If we were to say that, yes, you can still use your network attachment the way you have it, and now you just point to it through this, I think that's better migration than what you're calling out, Lionel. What you say we definitely can do for the claim through the webhook that I was calling out, right? The rewrite, that definitely could be for each individual claim, but here I'm not sure because of existing environments, right? So,
Yeah,
but what you're saying is definitely better. I agree with you, because that's cleaner, right? And I don't have to read on some unknown objects.
But my remark was about recognizing that this resource claim is about multi-network, because
so I would want
these
to put it on
parameters will
both,
contain
right?
an object that is multi-network.
Sure, but this is why I would want to keep it outside of the opaque part. It should be
Okay.
part of the standardized resource claim. That's why driver is the best place, not inside, because here I need to discover, because why I'm saying this is, oh, I see driver is Multus network community. I can now assume my controller to understand, okay, now I'm home, this is mine, so I can straight away not guess, but map this guy to a complete concrete structure, right? And then I can additionally validate that same way to say, oh, you're multi-network community, but your structure is not compliant with our API. Unfortunately, I'm rejecting you. You're not ready for me, right? So you will not work with me, because there is that aspect as well, right? Because otherwise, what you're saying, Lionel, then I have to get this, guess what's in it, guess whether the specific fields are there, and if they are, then check whether they are multi, and only then assume, okay, you're multi-network related.
Yeah, but we can have a group version kind inside this opaque parameters. So
no, this is what I'm
everything that
saying.
is Yeah,
Fine,
okay,
but
good.
what I'm getting at, why do I need to guess what's inside when I can do it outside with the direct name of the driver?
Yeah, because
What's wrong
here
with this one?
we enforce people to have this multi-network community or suffix.
We have to, otherwise you have to enforce them to have the kind, same way.
Yeah, but the kind we will enforce them anyway, because they will
What's the
have
difference?
this.
Tell me what's the difference between having in a driver versus in a kind.
Because in the, I mean, the kind we will have it, right?
No, what is the difference between having in a driver versus there? You enforce a specific string on the user anyway. So what's the difference?
The parameters
maybe I will ask
this.
Yeah, go ahead.
The opaque parameters, we will enforce them to have this group version kind anyway, right? We enforce people to have some kind of parameters.
Struct, yes, standardized struct here. That's the API
Yeah.
that we call it, right?
Yeah, but this we can have a group version kind inside. We can have this metadata, etc. We can have a normal Kubernetes object inside.
No, that's fine. But what I'm getting at, what's the difference? Why driver isn't better? Where I know the driver field always exists, and I don't have to guess it. I just always grab the driver because this part is always defined, right? And then I look at even there, because this is a list, right? I can say if you have more than one object, I reject you, right? I ignore you because our standard has only one item, right? You shall not have more than one. That's what multi-network will be about, right? At least in a template, right? To have the one-to-one mapping.
I could try to write an example. Maybe it would be more clear, but yeah.
No, so I think what you mean is to have here, or even not only that, you can have the whole metadata right here. What
yeah,
you're
exactly.
calling out,
Yeah.
you can have the whole metadata here, and then whatever. Let me see.
And then this will be our object, right?
Sure, but then I have to guess. Keep in mind, I assume that parameters is all opaque. So whatever is in the parameters, I have to guess what's here. That's what my problem is. Is that correct, or I'm wrong? I'm guessing. I haven't tried it. You did the most of it, so you tell me.
But
I assume
we will do it anyway. We will do it.
No, I won't, because if I know the driver is mine, because then the validation is clear. I grab the valid. I see what you're saying. Probably it's probably boils down to the same. But then if I don't have the driver and I try to map this, are you saying I just always whenever the driver?
Yeah, exactly. I always check the parameters.
I see. You're right. Maybe you're right. So basically, if you don't have the struct, I just ignore you, right? If the struct isn't according to this to our API, I just ignore whatever the driver is, right? Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I think that's that's fair.
Yeah,
So
I like the possibility of being able to pass up some more data. Like, so going back to my like not ready situation, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
in the case of some kind of error, I could see that just knowing the driver would not necessarily be enough for the user to take the next action, right? So you know it was Multis, but you don't know that it was Network Blue, right? So like that's
What do you mean? I'm confused because you would have a name on your resource claim, right? That will be called your network blue or whatever. Right? This you will call this one network blue. Network dash blue, right? Let's say that, and then you know that network blue. Of course, that's the gist,
but
right?
now it requires, so let's say it's Network Blue, but it's
Mhm.
backed by Multis, and
Uh-huh.
it's using a Mac VLAN, right?
Okay.
So Network Blue is now arbitrary and doesn't necessarily tell you like which component to look at yet.
I see what you're saying, but that's, I think we had the same problem with pod network. That was the same thing, right? When we discussed it with this one, right? You have the name of the network, which was arbitrary. You can name it the same way as your parameters, right? And then that will point to a specific network attachment. So the problem was the same before. It's just now we renamed the pod network into resource claim template. So that part was always there, that issue. The indirection, right? I think what you're calling out something that you called out before as well, but I think that's the cost we have to pay, right? Of the multiple indirections, right? And from what I'm hearing, I think
Yeah, I mean, the multiple indirections is definitely a challenge, and I think it makes it a challenge for people to debug this. And I
yeah,
can tell you from dealing with GA multi-network software for a long time, it's important that people know what's going on. Otherwise, you're going to get the engineering escalations asking you to
right.
figure out what happened.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, so, and the thing is, I'm okay to move on with this for now, but I do think that we should have an eye for what this, I think it's okay to move on for now and then see, hey, did we not have enough information here? Is there more that we need to bubble up?
mm,
And I see your point, which is, we have been suffering with this problem in the design. Um, but yeah, let's just keep an eye out for it to look at the, I guess, error cases once we are
right.
looking at the implementation. Yeah. Because I mean, it is fair enough to say, like, if you name it badly and then you can't find it, well, that's on you, you know.
Mm,
Um, but um, but yeah, I just want to make sure we're able to give enough guidance on a failure or a not ready state or something like that.
right. It will be tricky. I'm not saying it won't, right? Of course, you can have a simple, and I'm not sure where Lionel you're gonna drive your the CNI DRI driver. I would love that guy to be very simple. There is no parameters rev because was always optional. You drive off of the name only. That would be the best way if you could do something like that in the DRA driver. No flags, no blows and whistles, and just a simple use this name, and so then I will use that type of CNI or what's not, right? Without any extra parameters, because then that keeps it very simple. It's limiting, of course, I bet, but then you have the kind of cleanness of the networking, right? The way we have it today, right? With just this is what I was alluding when we talked about pod network, where let's say I don't have any parameters, I drive off of only the name of the pod network, right? For my provider, right? And then what's in the name, that's what I'm going to use for some configuration, right? Uh, something like that. But that's just a note. I think from what we are saying, we don't like option 2. Are we agreeing on that? Having the double indirection is a no-go. It's too much, right?
I tend to lean away from it
Yeah.
in a way. I feel
Yeah, I'm
like
gonna do this.
yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about having something that's named after networking that looks obvious to look at, but I
Yeah.
think that yeah, more indirection is bad. The closer we can keep it to your everyday objects,
Yeah.
the better.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one
Um,
aspect.
Just-
The other aspect now, yeah, go ahead, Lano.
Just a question about this resource claim template. Let's say that I create 2 resource claim templates that look like to each other. The one is named red and the other one is named blue, but both are connected. Both can communicate together.
Okay.
It would be a bit strange for the users, I believe, because, or maybe it's a misconfiguration. I don't know, but
What do you,
it's
so
like
I have, yeah,
it's like on multi-network we are seeing on 2 different networks, because one resource claim template is named red and the other one is named blue. But in reality, if you ping each other, it works.
so that's what I was thinking to do. I think we never blocked that in even in pod network, right? You could always reference the same network attachment into the various pod networks. We never said you cannot, right? It's a misconfiguration kind of, because you had now 2 references that point to the same networking configuration, right? Let's say they both use the same MAC VLAN parent. So basically they are in the same, let's say, VLAN. So, but then but that's a valid use case on the one aspect, and the aspect is IPAM. Depending on how you do your IPAM, of course. If IPAM is boiled down, trickled down to the CNI, then you kind of screwed, because that's you have one thing to do all that. But if it's not, and let's say your IPAM is done in some other ways, and only this guy only points to what is the parent interface, I should still be able to have 2 networks that each reference different subnet on the same VLAN, right? Because that's a valid use case as well. So for that reason, why not? A blue network, green network, pointing to the same VLAN, let's say, but both having different subnets. I know that in Multus you will do it with 2 different network attachments, each pointing to the same parent, but with different CIDR ranges, right? But that's what I'm kind of trying to call out here as well, right? That would you see, because that won't say that we cannot do that, because we could. Our controller, what it could do is a resource claim template shows up, our controller kicks off, checks whether parameters, if OPEC is of length 1, right, it cannot be longer, and then checks whether the parameters match our API. It does. Okay, that's mine. So at that point, I'm adding some sort of a metadata label or annotations into that resource claim. Yes, this is multi-networking approved. And after that, what we do is we validate this, right? How we validate? For example, we check whether you referencing the same object that other claim is referencing, and I can do cross-reference across. A controller can do that, and that's what one of the use cases I kind of had in mind to do. Definitely, I wanted to do that for default network, right? Because you should only have one. So if you create 2 resource claims named default that are multi-networking approved, the last one created, only the first created, the oldest will be ready. The other ones will be non-ready. I was definitely wanted to do that, right? You cannot have multiple default templates. I assume they are, you cannot because of the name anyway. So maybe that's a no op. But yeah, maybe I'm overthinking this. But I think cross-reference between the claims we could do, and we could block, like, you cannot reference the same parameters if you do in two different multi-networking claims. We can have that.
Yeah.
Is that what you? I assume this is what you're looking for. Is that correct, Lionel? Did I get it right?
Yeah, I was also thinking about security aspect, but I forgot about the that was possible in the cap.
Yeah, and we can add that. I think the problem here is this is a list. I think no, that's easy, right? Because you cross-reference the lists, right? You build, yeah, that should be possible, right? You cannot reference twice the same parameters, but is that too restricting though? On the other side, what do you think? Would that be too restricting if I were to force that uniqueness? Is there a way where, oh, I have a parameters that I want to share across multiple networks, right? Because this is a list, right? Keep in mind, this is a list.
Yeah, I don't think we can enforce it in our side.
No, we could. Why not? We could enforce it. It's just the computation is a bit higher, but it's a controller, so I'm not concerned about that.
No, I
There
mean,
won't be.
because in this example here, it's pointing to a network attachment definition, but two network attachment definition could have the same CNI config at the end.
Oh no, I agree. Two different. Yeah. But then, okay, that's, you always can play it. Yeah, I agree with you. So I think that boils down to whether we enforce it on this level at all, because what you just said is true as well, right? At the end, they can have the same values, two different objects, but the same values. Yeah. But then it's at least explicit and on purpose, right? Someone on purpose did that. Play around our restriction. Okay, you want to do it, you know what you're doing. We just want to prevent you from making a mistake. Maybe that should be that's how we should look at it. What do you think? Because then maybe you explicitly, yes, I want to have two. No, that's kind of limiting. Someone would say, so why do you make me make those two different network objects if the same values, right? Just let me reference them whenever I
guess
want,
it's
right?
pair implementation that should
exactly. So it's a pair implementation restriction. I think, yeah, I think I would not. But and what you just said, this is pair implementation restriction. You would just add that kind of. You would maybe. So this is where the reference of our controller will step in, right? Because we should have, our controller should be a reference implementation. You should be able to pick it up, get it as a library and expand it, right? Oh, I want to do what we just described, right? I don't want multiple resource claim to reference the same network attachments, right? You can have your controller expanding on that and having that kind of limitation. So I think I would not go for that, right? Let's make it a bit more open. All right, I think right now our preference will go with option 1, resource claim as a network, replacing. Are we okay with here? Do we need the metadata though? I'm kind of on a fence with that one, because we have so driver. You got.
I was saying, if you have the API version and the kind, it's easier to recognize, and we can versionize this.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, so you say have even all this.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
even, we don't care about the name because the name is there, but we want to have those two things. So that's what you call out, right? Kind, yes. Multi-network. I'm not sure what should be the kind, but let's say that. And then API version, we don't care. We control it. So let's say it's V1 alpha free, right? We don't have to have the like fully qualified domain. I'm not sure how that will go in the code. We have to qualify that, but I think that's why we kind of have a kind and API versioning for this. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I think I think it's what they recommend in DRA.
Oh, really? Oh, I
Have-
didn't know that. Oh, so you should say that first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the source, so I don't know, but I think I saw that from Patrick Hawley someday.
Oh, really? To have
A
something
comment
like that?
somewhere. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. No, this sounds good. And then the driver is your kind of driver takes over the provider. I remove the provider from this level, right? Are they so maybe do they recommend to have a fully qualified like Kubernetes KRM object? Do you know, like spec, status, all that? Status probably not, but spec and all this. Do you know?
I don't know. I will try to find when he said that, because I think I read it somewhere.
Okay. Okay. So those are more detailed information on what the view of this should be. But I think that the high level gist is driver takes over the provider of the stuff. The struct of this has to fit and be matchable by our controller to be multi-network compliant. Right? We still want to stick to the parameters and all this, right? We don't want to change that. I'm just questioning the list here. I wonder whether we still need the list. Comments? I remember, I think
Because it can only be, we've already said it's only gonna be one to begin with.
no. This can only be one here. This is
That can
on
only
the
be
on the D.
one, okay.
That can only be one. Here it's all on us, right? This is whatever we want, right? We can leave it a list, but I'm questioning: do we really need the list? Is there ever a case where we need to reference multiple network attachments? Considering, and maybe before we go to there, how I'm calling it and how I'm thinking is maybe this is something that let's call this out whether that's fair or not. So here, let's say that.
I added the comment that Patrick said that there is no kind inversion in the parameter content. You will have to think about versioning those parameter when going forward with standardizing
Okay.
them.
So that's on us. But I think we can borrow the
Yeah.
same models, right? What Kubernetes have. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Now the question would be, so we have a template. A resource claim template calls out only one device type, multi-network, right? Or maybe device kind, multi-network. So what I mean by that is the configs, right? Only one device kind multi-network. That's one aspect. And then what else I want to say? I think that's one aspect, right? That's the first aspect I want to call out. Is that something that we are not okay with? So I wonder whether there are cases where, yeah, I want to have my resource claim template to contain more items here than just one. And yeah, any opinions on this? I know that you can create, I know that the reason to have multiple to requests, I don't know, 2 GPUs, maybe 2 different types, or maybe 1 GPU plus a matching network interface to that GPU, right? So I would want to have a config that calls them two of them, and I get that pair. I think there is some hardware association related for GPUs as well, so that's why I want to call them two together. But
you can
that's
create multiple already.
You can create multiple claims, right?
No. Config OPAC is a list.
I know, and I want to for multi-networking. I want to force to just one item. That's what I'm calling out. Resource claim calls out only one device kind.
what if we not block one item and we have multiple items?
So that's not this is what I want to put a restriction, and I'm asking you if that's okay or not. If we were to say this list can only be of length of 1, you cannot have more. Because if we allow more, is that a network blue then? Is that still a network blue? What does that mean if you have a here you call out a network, let's say this is my VF pair network plus a GPU. I'm just
I don't have enough knowledge to say about that for now. I would say I'm not sure.
But you see the kind of problem?
Yeah, I
right?
see the problem. Yeah, of course. But
so should we
cannot
just keep it
say more.
simple and just put this restriction? Any comments on this? Will that be too much? I think this is what.
Well, I have another question about using the name of the template as network name.
Mm.
It means that, I mean, how would it work for two pods that are in two different namespaces? They cannot be on the same network.
Why? What namespace? So is resource claim a namespace?
Yes, I'm almost sure about that.
Really? I think then and you say that you can. Oh my god. Okay. That kind of breaks us a bit.
Yes, it is.
Makes me think now we should go with pod network then as the intermediate, because then we can make this guy non-namespaced, and then the reference is global, because namespace reference is a hassle. What we can have then is our controller can create a resource claim template for each pod network that is there. What about that? So when this network is ready, we create resource claim templates for it in each namespace. I know that's annoying, but I think that's the only way. That points out to itself. Because yeah, this being namespace is a big problem. It's like with the network attachment definition, right? Where we are having this default namespace or non-default namespace machinery right in place to allow things. But then, as you said, right, I have to create stuff in the default, so RBAC and all that crap. What do you think? Or should we just follow the Multus approach, right, where you put resource claim in default? That means everyone can. Oh, you can, but no, pods cannot reference it, right? Because the array doesn't allow that. That's another thing, right? Is that true, Lionel? I assume you can only reference things in your own namespace, right?
Resource claim in your own namespace? Yes, I think so. I'm almost sure, but I think so.
Yeah. Makes me think to go with the pod network approach and automated resource claim template creation. Then we go and create it in every namespace, right? And then if you want to access to that network, you do go and reference that. Yeah. Then you can even put a control with this, which namespaces can have it. You just don't create the objects in the namespaces where it shouldn't be, right? There is well, at least that's where that way you can as well control on which namespace can have access or not, if you want to have that, right? So you can have like a either extra object calling that out, right? Where I can replicate the templates. Just can template. Thoughts? Anyone?
Yeah, I don't know. That's tricky.
So yeah, we cannot go with Multus model because you cannot cross-reference across namespaces. So that's a no-go. So we have to have ability to create a template across namespaces. But yeah, I think the only way would be create this centralized pod network and then create the templates, automate the resource claim template. So basically, the resource claim template is just your implementation detail. In pod, you still reference the name of the pod network, which basically will be the name of the resource claim. It will have the same names, the way we would replicate them with our controller. So that part will be kind of transparent, right? So you don't have to worry about this anymore because we will handle all the full creation of this object. What you end up with just fully strict pod network object where we fully control it, right? And there is no list, no nothing, no additional extra restrictions.
And yeah, just verify then a pod should reference a resource claim in the same namespace as the pod.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay. What do you think about that? Having the pod network object still as a CRD, our controllers grabs that and creates the appropriate claim templates based on what our standards, and then even it can straight away publish so we don't need a webhook anymore. This will be populated by our controller. Our controller additionally can as well put some logs and what's not on the resource claim in case, for example, it's being used, or leverage the array for that on kind of calling out how much you can modify this thing. This is template, so probably that's fine, but yeah. It's
a good argument for having that extra indirection. It's like,
yeah.
I guess I also kind of like the idea that all right, so we have these like these abstraction from, like in this example, net attached F to pod network to resource claim template. I like the idea potentially that the resource claim template is kind of auto magically created.
Yeah, we control it, right?
Because then I feel like it simplifies it a bit when we go to say, hey, this is how you do it, is you create the pod network, right? And then
Exactly.
the controller goes and creates those. And then we say, this is how you reference it to be able to use it. It winds up in the namespaces that it's supposed to be in. You know, I do ask myself this question, like, if we go and put this in if we make the rule like you create it, it's global, and then it's added to every namespace, then are we giving potentially the like ability for people to access things they shouldn't have access to? Do we need some kind of rule set there? But I mean, I guess we could build on that from here. Yeah. We're running out of time, and sorry.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened there at the end. But
Yeah, I have to drop as well. All right, let's kind of sit on this one. But I think I like that idea of the controller creating the templates for us, because then we kind of, the DRA is completely cut out of the picture from the UX point of view, right? We create a pod network, and that's our user facing object, and then you reference in the DRA field, you reference the name of the pod network, right, in your namespace. So that's still kind of valid. If I wonder whether there needs to be additional data you have to provide, but beside that, you do that. Maybe the provider or something, depending on what
The
needs to be
provider will
specified.
become the driver.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah, that's true. But I wonder whether when you specify this in a pod, we need to look at that. Okay, next week let's talk about that one. We're still meeting next week, right? Let's continue on. Let me just add that reference.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, probably.
Details on reference in pod. So let's see how it is done inside the pod, and then see how the full user journey will look like, right? I create pod network. In the background, we create a template, and then in the pod, you reference that guy in what way, how that look like, right? So then we will see the full pictures on how that would, what will all this mean. All right, folks, let's call it here. Thanks.
all right,
Next
thanks,
week.
guys. All right, bye.
Thanks. Bye.